There we go. We got it. All right, we got all of our folks back. I think so. The order of my windows changed, so it took me a minute. All right, and we're back to streaming. All right, let's move on to director's report. Miss Danielle?
Yeah, just one sec.
Take your time.
Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So health and safety. So I already went over some of the key updates. You can see our numbers from last week. And when we got the update was on February 10th, but it's going into effect on the 21st from the North Carolina Strong Schools Toolkit. And most of it is, the key updates are very similar to what they've been in terms of the fact that the priority is in-person learning. They're doing everything they can to help schools stay open and in person, that they're, one of the best mitigation strategies is vaccination and boosters. They're still recommending that masks be worn when you're in an area of high or substantial transmission. And although that could change in the future, but that's what they're saying right now. And so we're monitoring that. And that the biggest change is not quarantining from contact tracing. Does anybody have questions about any of that?
Does everyone understand what we're talking about when we say the toolkit? Sometimes I try to remember that, just because it makes sense to some of us. It might be new to some of us out in YouTube land or whatever, but for anyone who might be watching who doesn't know and definitely anyone, just back me up if I miss something, but the toolkit is something that the state, like DHHS, they get with other health professionals. Division of Child Development helps some, especially for a portion that is, there's a separate toolkit for children under 5 for childcare, and I've been deeply involved in that one, but that's the toolkit. So I just don't want anyone to wonder what the toolkit is or where all these guidelines are coming from, just dropping out of the air. It's our state level guidance, basically.
Are there any questions before I go on? So the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is the lottery, which is set to run tomorrow. I don't know what happened. There was a date here. I think this was 1/10. But it looks like somehow it disappeared. But you can see a month later, so this is a month ago, you can see our numbers for each of the grade levels. We had 186 total applications. And as of now, we have 308. So you can see that we have 93 applications for 40 seats in kindergarten. And you can see that there was a great jump in 6th grade applications to 60, which is amazing, actually. And so we've got a pretty good number of kids that are looking for somewhere to go for middle school, is what that means. And we sometimes lose some middle school kids because we don't have some of the same sports offerings and things. So it's really great that we have this really nice number of applications for middle school for those who are seeking something alternative than a big middle school experience for their children. Any questions on the lottery?
So when you say that is tomorrow's the last day for families to enter, or the actual drawing is tomorrow?
If I'm not wrong, tomorrow is the actual running of the lottery. Ben,
Okay.
Rose, can you correct me if I'm wrong?
You're not wrong, Danielle. Sounds great. Yeah, we run the lottery tomorrow. And so names will be picked, but people can still apply, Lakeisha, because they can be added to our wait list.
Okay. Awesome.
And so they will get an automated email generated that will tell them whether they got a seat or where they are in the wait list. And then every time a seat opens and somebody moves on the wait list, they get an automatic email. So it's a really good automated process.
Sounds like it.
And then last thing, there's some upcoming events. So there's a family night this Friday night. It's a movie on the NPR lawn that the partnership is putting on. And then it is outside, so bring a blanket and a heater if you have one. And just a reminder that we're planning in the development committee a fundraiser on May 7th. It's an evening under the oaks where we'll have a silent auction. We're going to be auctioning off art, but we're also going to be asking our community if they have other things that we could auction off. So for example, big ticket items, like if somebody had a vacation house that they were willing to put on silent auction for a week, or some other types of services. So you'll be seeing more and more information going out about that. It's adults only, and it's going to be on our campus.
Nice.
Any questions? If there are no questions, the next part of the report is to look at some data, and I want to thank Lisa Cole for putting this together to share with the board. And Lisa, I'm gonna make you the host now. Let me stop sharing.
Great. Hi, everybody. If you don't know me, I'm Lisa Cole. I'm our school's MTSS coordinator, which stands for the multi-tiered system of support that we have employed at this school to help all our students get partnered with the support they need. Tonight, I am going to be sharing some of our school-wide student data. And before I launch into a presentation of that, I just want to remind everybody that, this is our student data. This isn't a performance of our teachers or our school. This is really an opportunity for us to look at how our kids are achieving and what we can do to adapt our instruction and our support for them to kind of continue through this year successfully. So let me get into that. Okay, so just generally speaking, want to make sure we all have the same language. I know Lakeisha was talking about that earlier, and I can certainly launch into some real teacher talk in acronyms. So if I do any of that tonight, please don't hesitate to wave a hand or ask a question so that I can make sure that everybody understands what I'm talking about today. So we do benchmarking assessments 3 times a year across all our grade levels in both reading and math. This is a part of how we assess risk with our students, but also how we check on our instruction, make sure that our curriculum is scoped and sequenced in a way that we're meeting all our students' needs. The data, like I said, is used to drive the instruction and identify and to adapt to our support needs. So again, kids aren't, this isn't a punitive data collection for anybody, for teachers or students. We have two main systems we use at the school. Our state-funded M-Class system is the state-approved reading early literacy assessment system that we use. And you'll be looking tonight at our DIBELS composite scores. These scores are a compilation of several literacy measures that are necessary to become a skilled reader. So in kindergarten, that might include letter naming and letter sounds and how we segment phonemes in a word. But that might in second and third grade be more oral reading fluency, word reading fluency, and text comprehension. So there is a spectrum of skills that kids acquire, and DIBELS really encompasses all of those literacy skills. And we use that assessment in kindergarten through third grade. And then we also use NWEA's measurement of academic progress, which is a nationally normed assessment we call MAP. I'm sure you've heard the kids talk about it. And this is an adaptive assessment measure, meaning if kids are getting things right a lot, that the assessment gets harder and harder. If students miss questions, the assessment might get a little easier, and allowed us to find the sweet spot for each student and where they're ready to learn. So you can see we assess with the MAP assessment in reading in 4-8, as well as in math. And in kindergarten through third grade, we use the MAP assessment just for math. Okay, so just to start out with some proficiency data. So this means that if a student is considered proficient, if they are at the 40th percentile or above, and if you know the statistical bell curve, that's really what 40th percentile says is proficiency. And so what our data is saying right now in our, in our January assessments. So right after we came back from remote, we did our main assessment, and M-Class assessments happened over the whole month of January. So this math proficiency data is part of that MAP assessment I was just talking about. And you can see here, the way I've kind of laid out this graph is to share a lot of information in one graph. So the yellow represents students in the K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or middle grades loop. So the information is combined. And if students are in the yellow, that means they are not yet proficient. If they're at or above that proficiency level, then they're in green. And so this gives an idea of where our students are at. Statistically, the state and, like I said, statistics tells us that at least 80% of our students should be meeting at or above proficiency. And so I think this math data really represents that well. Okay, for our next piece of information, sorry, I'm struggling to turn slides. Here we go. Okay, so this is that reading proficiency data. So for K1 and 2-3, this is data about proficiency from the M-Class reading system. And in 4-5 and 6-8, this is reading proficiency based on our MAP growth assessment. So two different assessments, but measuring proficiency in the skills in reading, language arts. So again, a similar graph format in that students in yellow are considered below proficiency or 40th percentile or lower. And in green are students that are at or above that proficiency level. So I think I always hate to bring my opinions into data, but I'm really excited to see that the work our students and our teachers are doing to maintain their proficiency, even with some really difficult times over the last 2 years. So I think this was encouraging for our teachers to see that they were on the right track. Does anybody have any questions about either of these two proficiency graphs or this data before I move into the next kind of piece of information?
Do we collect this data at the beginning of the year also? Or is there a way to compare how things if people have become more proficient?
Great that you asked, Tiffany.
I'm a
That's my
transition.
very next slide. So yes,
All
actually
right.
we do. We collect this data 3 times a year. So our benchmark in August, September, we try to do it pretty quick in the beginning of the school year because we're not looking for any sort of growth for students. We're just trying to see where they're at. And then what I'm about to share with you is that growth from the fall. So our August, September original benchmarking period to this period. So again, I've tried to include a lot of information in one graph. So I'll make sure it's up here for a minute and then take a second to break it down for everybody. But essentially it's a match of what I just shared with you for winter. So you see that in K1, that 9%, that below proficiency, that's the same data we just looked at for math. And you can see that in the lighter green here for K1, for 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 8. And then I wanted to give you the comparison point of how our students, the number of students who are below proficiency have decreased, which is what we want, right? We want less students that are below proficiency. It's a lot of negatives, but of course we want to increase proficiency for our students. So for instance, in K1, you can see we had 16% of students below proficiency, and now in this last benchmarking period are down to 9%. And you can read that data across here. So 2, 3, we went from 21% down to 20. In 4, 5, 16% and up to 22. We'll talk about some of the mitigating measures we're talking about there. And then from fall to winter in 6, 8 with math proficiency from 24% that were below proficiency down to 20%. Is that kind of what you were looking for, Tiffany?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay. And then of course for reading, similar thing, similar data or similar view of the data. So again, we're looking at M-class assessment for K3. So they are comparing the same assessment measures from fall to winter for K3, but it's a different assessment in 4-8. So here you can see in kindergarten and first grade, of course, our kindergarten students don't come in very proficient, and that's okay. They're allowed to arrive just as they are. And our teachers and students have worked hard already. And we have just those 17% falling below proficiency. In 2, 3, we went from 23% below to now 20. In 4, 5, 14% down to 11. And in 6, 8, 19% to 20% at below proficiency. So again, I think this is really informative. I mean, this is pretty broad information. We've looked at this data at the teacher and at the student level. So we've dove in as a staff and as a support staff quite deep into this data in particular, and are making small and large adjustments in our instruction and support plans for students based on a lot of what this is encompassing. Any questions about the math proficiency growth from fall to winter in math or in reading? Okay, the last thing I'll share with you is some EOG projections. So only students in 3rd through 8th grade take the end of grade assessments. That's our statewide achievement assessment. And it's how our school is graded as a state. So we have, excuse me, we have MAP assessments gives us some projections for our end of grade assessments. And the way that this is really most helpful is because none of these assessments, neither the M-class reading assessments in K3 or the MAP reading assessments or math assessments are exactly like the end of grade assessments. You know, they aren't formatted exactly the same. They don't look exactly the same on the paper for students. So as a staff, when we're trying to really ensure our students are going to meet the rigorous demands that the state is is asking of them, and be able to show how smart they are, in an assessment format. The MAP assessments gives us some projections. What's interesting about these projections is that they are based on our mid-year data. And so they're saying that if our students were to take the MAP and, the end of grade assessments now based on our current MAP assessment data, this is what our proficiency levels would be as a school. Now, we all know we have 4 or 5 more months left of school. So it's always important to take that into account when you look at projections like this. So for grades 3 through 8, our math proficiency on the end of grade assessments are projected at 72 or 73% of our students receiving a level 3, 4, or 5, and 27% of our students being considered not proficient. They no longer give a level 1 or level 2 score. Okay. And then in reading, our projections are based, because the M-Class assessments in reading do not correlate to the end of grade assessments. This is a projection for just our 4th through 8th graders. So this is a discrepancy between the last graph I showed you. So I did want to point that out because this doesn't include all the great work that's happening with our 3rd graders and their expected proficiency this year as they take the first end of grade assessment. They take assessments called the beginning of grade assessment that they started at the school year with. So this projection shows 61% of our students receiving proficiency levels at level 3, 4, or 5, and 40% or receiving not proficient or a level 1 or 2 in reading on the end of grade assessments. So just to finish up for today, I'm sorry, does anybody have any questions about, I can put those back up there too, those 2 projection pieces of information?
Of course I do. So has the definition of proficient changed because of the last couple of years and remote schooling and everything? Is this 40% expectation different? Is the test number of questions that they're supposed to get right or anything like that, has that changed?
I think what I can say, Tiffany, because no, would be my simplest answer. But I do want to make sure that you understand why I would give such a simple answer is that the M-Class assessments and the MAP assessment and the end of grade assessment are all really different assessments, and they come from different places and have different purposes and goals. They ask children to do very different things. And so when we think about a test like the MAP assessment, which is a nationally normed research-based assessment that's given around the world, I mean, primarily in the United States, but given mostly, but has that opportunity and use outside of the US, I would say the fact that it hasn't changed is okay because we're all going through this, right? And kids are all changing and having different opportunities and experiences all the time. So there's really, there's no way to remove that vulnerability or that variability. When it comes to the M-Class assessment, those are one-on-one assessments. So they're given one teacher to one child live. And so I think we learn a lot more from giving the assessment than the actual number tells us, Tiffany. I mean, I think, I respect the numbers deeply, but as a teacher also, the process is really what it's about because I'm learning so much about how to adapt my instruction from that process. So again, there I am like kind of throwing that one out the window too. So really what it comes down to is, has the end of grade adapted to the changes that kids have been asked to adapt to? And I think we all know the answer to a state assessment in that regard. I think the state's doing the best they can within their confines. You know, we weren't required to take the EOGs the first round. We have been required, but haven't necessarily been schools haven't been given any sort of punitive measures for their end of grade assessments. I forget what it's called. There's a free pass. There's a fancier name for that. I'm sorry, I can't think of it right this minute. But we didn't have to take the end of, so essentially they, and we haven't heard that this year. So we prepare our kids to be prepared for whatever. I think that's really what it is we teach our kids the standards, we make sure they're growing and they show mastery, and we're hopeful that they can show all that great growth and knowledge on the end of grade assessments also.
And so are students showing the growth that we would expect before COVID, or?
Yeah, so I think what you're probably asking is, are they showing similar growth to that they did before? And they are. Our students, I think that's exactly what that growth data was showing, is that for me to show you previous years compared to these years feels apples to oranges, but I suspect in the work that I've been doing, this is exactly the type of projected growth we expected within the M-CLASS and MAP assessments. And remember, like I said, some kids grew a ton, some kids fell behind. This is an average of how our students did. And really, I think what we do really well, and I'm really proud of, is that we individualize that support. And so we drill down and really use that data to help each individual kid. And I think that's why I get passionate about data, is because it allows us to do that so efficiently and really just target their needs.
Thank you. And thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to share the hard work that is quantified this way.
Lisa, you had referred to some mitigating circumstances with the reading in the 4-5. I was going to ask about that. What were you going to say about that?
Yeah, sure. I think what we're doing is using the data to do mitigating strategies across all different areas, Lakeisha. Like I said, I did point out one specific area of increased less proficiency, that the opposite direction of what we were hoping for. I think some of the strategies we've been putting in place are really targeting that support, using this data to figure out not just what academic needs kids are having, but most likely barriers surrounding social emotional needs and behavioral needs, changes in their environment, and so really tackling the foundational work, because I think what the data was telling us is academically the kids are learning and progressing in really great ways, and the other factors are often those outliers. A child might not be able to show as well on a test what they can do because they are pretty anxious about what might be going on in their home life or in their peer life. So we've been really trying to tackle that this past year, and I'm really proud of the work our new school counselor Olivia Horn has been doing. We have a new school social work intern on board. And so I really feel like we're helping kids and families feel more prepared to be learning. You can't learn if your brain's not in the game. And so I think that's really what CFCI does well, is we've gone back to our roots in responsive classroom, helping teachers and kids learn new strategies for self-awareness and self-management. We've had some PD recently in our faculty. And I think that's really, of course, we're adding in tiered support academically as well, Lakeisha, for kids who need that. But where we're finding the biggest impact is in that social emotional level of support, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the other thing I didn't mention is the awesome work our TAs are doing. We have a lot of TAs on our staff this year, and they're helping our teachers differentiate and provide that targeted support. And so they've also been a real crucial element this year to the success of, those lost opportunities of learning. Not that learning was lost while kids were at home. I mean, I think they learned just really different things. And so we're just trying to get everybody feeling comfortable back at school.
Awesome.
You know where to find me if you end up having any questions about our academic or other data that our school is using to drive support.
That we do.
Thanks so much, Lisa. That was great. Did you
All
want me
right.
to share my screen again, or do you need me to, Lakeisha?
I don't. I also have the agenda pulled up, but I appreciate it. And we're coming close to the end. We're on the downslide of things anyway. I want to give everyone a chance to do any board goal updates if they had any. Okay, I can go for exec a little bit. Not a whole lot has changed since last month. Basically, we met with, where we're going to meet with Susan, our HR person, to help develop the 360 eval tool. We're moving into those next stages and out of these early stages. So one of our next steps will be to visit one of the policies, this policy 537, that actually directly addresses the evaluation tool. So that will need to be changed to make sure that we're compliant. So we're making some progress there. Did I miss anything, Stephen, on that? I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Other than that, that's about it, friends. Anything else anyone wanted to either share or make sure it goes on next month's agenda before we call it a night? All right. Going once, going twice? In that case, I would love a motion to adjourn.
I will move that we adjourn the meeting.
And a second, please. Thank you, Dr. Hill. All those in favor? Hot dog. All right, motion carried. Thanks so much, folks. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and a great week. See y'all next time.